Hi, I'm David Gauntlett. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a Canada Research Chair in Creative Practice at the Creative School, Toronto Metropolitan University. This is a Pecha Kucha presentation, which means there's 20 slides. They each show for 20 seconds, and I try to keep up. And so now, every year this has become an annual process. We have to send in a Pecha Kucha title and abstract in about November. And I set myself a question that I don't know the answer to. And so this one says, when is making music research creation, and when is it just making music? It maybe looks quite simple, but this is a tough question. This is the same question faced by everybody in research creation, essentially. And in the abstract that I sent in, it says, in 2024, I made and distributed more music than ever before, and I see it as an emerging research creation practice. But what does this really mean? You're doing painting or poetry or photography or video games because it's what you like to do, or you're doing painting or poetry or photography or video games as research creation. And what's the difference? It's a big question. And I'll be talking about that in the second half of my 20 slides. First of all, I want to step back to an even bigger question, which is, what is research creation or practice-based research, and how is this even a thing? And you'd think, don't we already know that? It's when there's like a professor who does some artistic or creative thing, and so they call that research creation for some reason. But that's not it, or that's not quite it. And you get a lot more people doing it than explaining it. That's good news for me because I'm writing a book which does exactly that. And I absolutely love it because the arguments are much more solid than you think. People doing research creation tend to just get on with it, and they can be a bit apologetic about it and say, well, I know it's not science. But actually, scientific experimentation is not a million miles away from creative experimentation. And we get asked, how can research creation be rigorous? That seems hard, but what does rigorous mean? It means you have done it carefully and well, with attention to detail so that you can describe something properly, which is what we do. And let's say you've got a survey study of 3,000 people where you're quantifying 3,000 necessarily superficial responses, or you've got a really deep, rich study of one person's experience processed through human, thoughtful, creative means. Which of those is more rigorous? It's that one, the single person, thoughtful, creative one. That's what rigor is. Research creation goes deep, and it's unusual and good because it goes deep. So, back to my question, when is making music research creation, and when is it just making music? The question reminds me of when they'd asked me to do a talk in Leeds, UK, and I suggested this title. What is practice-based research, and how do you know when you're doing it? Now, I'm sorry, but I thought that was a great title, How Do You Know When You're Doing It? And the Leeds people said, no, we've got lots of people who are already doing practice-based research, so it doesn't make sense to have a simplistic title like that. But I'm like, this is like the god of all questions. Like most godlike things, it is pure and virtuous, but also quite difficult, and it makes people uncomfortable. I'm not trying to undermine research creation. On the contrary, I want to get research creation clear because it's so powerful. And so, when is my music making a form of research? Well, it's about something. I'm exploring how creative work can be gentle and healing while also wanting to be political and challenging, because it's quite hard for those to go together in an impactful way. Can something be gentle but also exciting and not passive? And how do you balance the process and the product? We all like outcomes, but we have to keep an emphasis on process because all the struggles that we are engaged in are process. And we don't actually arrive at the promised land, but it's important what we do when we are trying. And it's important for artists to be on the path, trying, and to be seen to be trying, more than it is important that they make lots of products. That's the social role of the artist. Also, there's a struggle about wanting to be heard and recognized, so you want to slot into some conventions, but also reject the conventions. It's not easy. That's why it's research. The Dappled World, which I really like, it's by a professor of advanced mathematics, suggests that our knowledge of the world is a patchwork, not a pyramid. That's how it feels, and we should trust that feeling. But that means it's complex to articulate. and we need art to help us talk about it. We're concerned about social justice and the environment and neurodiversity and talking about race and gender rather than not talking about them and pretending everything's okay. As you will have noticed, in 2025, Canada is pulling together in response to the trade wars stuff, but the new focus on economics means people are talking less about equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. Some people, you may have noticed, are happy to quietly step away from these obligations, and we should keep an eye on that. One of the ways that you know you're doing research creation and not just having fun is when there's a tense relationship between what you're doing and the context that you're in. And so, to answer my own question, making music is research creation when it's dealing with all of these things and striving, but doing it explicitly and in a documented way. Other kinds of artists do these things too. Of course they do. Artists are creators of knowledge. That's fine. That doesn't show that research creation isn't a thing. It shows that research creation is a thing because artists are creators of knowledge and creators of ideas and inspirations and new ways of seeing and who communicate with feeling and so can motivate us to do brave new things. So, in some ways, research creation is not just another method, it is the method. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.